The chaotic touch of harmony too, bonded by fire. By law-abiding pony. Chapter 3, SPF 40. Part 1 of 4. The armory was 5 stories underground and under enough security to give anyone pause, save the alicorns of Equestria or anyone who knew how to bypass the anti-magic ward. Between cameras, guards, and 3-meter steel walls, the passage between the vault door made airport security seem like the front door of a welcoming grocery store. The elevator dinged 4 seconds before the doors opened and the 3 human guards met the 4 ponies with guns raised as the soldiers waited for the ceiling-mounted camera to verify their identity on the private network. The herd had only been down here a few times since construction was complete, and it still unnerved the mares to stare down the barrel of 2 AA-12 shotguns 2 meters out of arm's reach. None of them moved until the scanning lasers faded and the lights around the elevator went green, signaling the guards to stand down. The guards resumed their posts and gave curt yet respectful nods to the herd as they moved past the checkpoint and 20 meters of cold concrete to the happily whistling Earth Mare quartermaster. At odds with her environment, the bright pink quartermaster was a cheery individual and waved Alexia down as the 4 ponies approached. "Alex, hey. So boss man finally dragged you guys back into fieldwork, did he?" Toon stopped at the ballistic glass window between her and the pink Earth pony. "More like he was ordered to drag us back. Such is the way of things," she replied evenly as she checked each member of the herd into the system. "Okay, I have the requisition orders for desert loadouts for 2 Earth ponies and a Pegasus already assembled and ready to wear. As for you, Special Agent, I've had to customize your harness due to your unique combo." Toon gave the pink mare a sarcastic eye as she waited for the vault to open. "You can just say because I'm an alicorn." The pink mare had problems with being too much of a conversationalist and found it very difficult to keep her answer brief and professional. "Sorry ma'am." The special agent gave her a polite smile. "There's no need to apologize. If anything, you should be praised for taking the initiative." The quartermaster's sullenness evaporated into a bright smile. "Thank you, Your High." She stopped herself and cleared her throat. Right this way please." While Brad and Marcy's enchantment company had a very lucrative public front, a whole separate division of the company was exclusively oriented to military contracting to Section 9. Alexia was the one to find the latest inventions waiting for her, although she was not aware of its importance until the quartermaster unlocked the armory's vault door to introduce the team to what laid within. The pink pony was as big of a technophile as Loki was, and once the novelty of magic wore off over the past 2 years, she viewed all magic application for what it was, a discipline of science for technology to latch onto. That love of technology always brought a beaming smile to the quartermaster's face when she was introducing new tech to the agents that came down to see her. The 4 field agents found themselves in a room that spanned the entire underground story. Fluorescent lights lit up drab green metal racks of tools, weapons, and other gear for humans and ponies alike. Each rack was neatly packed next to the other, and the various tools and equipment were all neatly organized and stored to maximize efficiency. From the right side of the door and midway to the far right wall, were lockers housing all of the off-duty agents. Most were empty due to the agency being hard-pressed in the current world crises. The pink mare was thrilled at the prospect of finally getting the chance to equip her beloved princess. "Keep it together, Gumball. Remember your job. Right now, I have to act as if she's just another field agent, not the mare responsible for your freedom and saving you from a life in a concentration camp." With that being said, that did not mean she wasn't going to enjoy herself. She stopped near Crimson, who was closest, to speak to them again. "Where are my manners? I forgot to introduce myself," she said, fumbling for words. "I'm Pack Rat." Loki temporarily forgot the satchel she was putting together to giggle. "I didn't know anyone wanted to change their name to a pony one." Pack Rat's face was laced with confusion for a moment before realization dawned on her. "Oh no, that's not my real name. Just my code name for the agency." Toon found that odd. "We were never given code names." Rat nodded knowingly. "Likely because of that perception scrambler you came up with didn't make it necessary for you at the time." But after reading some of the equestrian books that the military released back to us, I found out that Equestria's royal guard use something similar to this by enchanting their armor to make all of their fur and hair identical. So I managed to do something similar to all of our equipment harnesses. Instead of making us all look alike, which would give us away too easily, they instead alter our colors and QD marks to be random upon activation so no one will know who we really are. Conrad was both greatly intrigued and annoyed by the information. Seems being relegated to training instructors has left us out of the loop for much of the department's changes over the year. Pak shrugged. Such is the nature of our profession. Anyway, since you're back on in the need to know, I can introduce you guys to the latest gear. The pink mare squealed inwardly with girlish delight at being in the presence of the royal herd. The 4 other ponies lined up behind Pack Rat as she went to the racks holding unclaimed harnesses. This one is tailored for earth mares. She pressed a button towards the side of the rack and the steel rods holding it up moved away from the rack and down to shoulder level of the ponies. It's called the EPMUH-10. That's a mouthful, Loki replied while casting a critical eye at the gear. The pink mare grinned at the assumed compliment. It's still an efficient acronym though. Either way, the U-10 comes with the standard polyester harness along with the scrambler enchantment I told you about. Given that you're ponies, the enchantment feeds off your own mana, whereas our human agents have a limited battery life of about 10 hours or so. Loki was enamored by the idea of humans wielding magic. How did we manage that? Pack Rat couldn't have been asked a more enticing question and she beamed an even bigger smile. Well, I'd love to claim the transformer crystals were my own doing, but that belongs solely to the B&M Enchantment Company. But what I do know is that basically, mana is energy just waiting to be converted into some other form of energy. Now, while we ponies produce that naturally through our carbuncles, as you well know, she explained while gesturing to Alexia. Humans obviously do not. She continued with a bit of a self-gratification. But when has that ever stopped man from doing what can't be done right? While every pony in Trinity fully accepted, both emotionally and cognitively, as being a different species, they still mostly saw themselves as having human mindsets and desires. So Brad, from the company, worked up the first prototype transformer roughly 5 months ago. Rat started rummaging around in one of the human utility harnesses and taking one of the pockets apart to pull a crystal out. Behold, she announced proudly. The biggest real step forward for Magtronics, where pony magic and Earth's technology are made one. The crystal was as small as a thumb, and was transparent seafoam green with copper wiring running all through it and small silicon chips completely encased in the jewel. From her own experience, Alexia easily identified the crystal to be a heavily modified reservoir crystal. It looks as if it was forged around the electronics instead of being implanted with it. Pack Rat gazed upon it as if it was the Holy Grail. As long as the battery holds out, this baby can make anyone mage. It might one day help stave off magic exhaustion. Toon and the others looked it over carefully, but the object never left Rat's hoof. Surely there has to be limitations to it. Having mana and actually making it do anything is 2 very different tasks. Pack nodded sadly as she replaced the crystal back into its home. I guess of all people, you would know that most of all. It's capable of powering any enchantment within its power capacity and enables the use of some arrays, but anything else is beyond our reach at the moment. Crimson eyed the crystal until it was hidden again by the harness. It's still a big step towards the integration of magic into our technology though. And what are Terrans known for most of all? She said with dramatic flair, giving Conrad a wink in the process. The stallion huffed in pseudo-indignation as the green pony continued. Ingenuity, my good mare. I have no doubt this will rock the world like the internet has. Rat perked back up. All the more reason I wish I was listed as its inventor instead, she replied with a smirk. Moving on though, she pointed out a few small pockets and satchels sewn seamlessly into the harness. This eliminates the need for a noisy and comparatively ponderous saddlebag while granting some additional protection from blunt trauma or ballistics. Just don't bet on it saving you though. We are not a full-on military organization after all, so the harnesses are just meant for utility, not outright protection. Pack Rat removed the harness from the rank and handed it over to Loki before pressing the buttons again to get a second harness for Crimson. The material was light grey and fit snugly on their bodies, with them being anchored at the points where their legs connected to their barrels. Without the need to physically hide their coat or marks, it left much of their fur open to the air in its minimalist approach. The only exception was along the spine, where the harness tactfully hid the magtronics necessary to power the perception scrambler and the various pockets and detachable satchels along the sides. Pack Rat's cycling of the rack came to a halt midway through the point where the two Earthmares were donning their equipment. This is the PSA-7. Basically the same thing as the EPM, except it's designed to be more comfortable and aerodynamic during flight. It also comes standard with goggles and a personal radio built into the frames of the lens. The range isn't very far, but it's meant for inter-team communications only. After Conrad retrieved his harness, Pack Rat moved over to an isolated rack that stood apart from the rest of the room and beckoned Toon to follow her. Now, I never actually knew you'd ever return to fieldwork, but I couldn't help myself from making a harness especially for you. The princess forcibly hid her sarcasm. Not all that surprising. You would hardly be alone in that sort of thing. The pink mare concealed her goofy grin and opened the metal casing around the rack. I present to you the AA-09. The only harness specifically designed for an alicorn, or for you seeing as you're the only one, Pack Rat added hesitantly. I get that a lot, Toon replied lightheartedly. I take it, this harness is a combination for unicorns and Pegasi, correct? The pink earth pony nodded. Mostly. But I know you are the leading expert in magic arrays, so I had a couple of friends of mine help program this while I crafted the hardware. I integrated a small onboard computer that can allow you to do this. Pack finished booting the harness's computer and switched to the appropriate application. A few seconds later, a very simplistic holographic array materialized around the harness. Pretty snazzy, at? I also made sure you can wear this with your necklace. Toon couldn't help but to coo at the sight, and her delight was reflected in her eyes. Pack Rat felt euphoric at pleasing her princess. The alicorn walked over to fully inspect the hologram. Have you tested to see if this can do what I think it can? Pack Rat was afraid of just that very question, and she laughed haltingly, her elation deflated. Well, to be honest, I just finished putting that bit on there 3 days ago and have since been debugging it. But as far as a real test, then no. Alexia rubbed her chin in contemplation. In theory it should work. All a chalk-drawn array does is shape the mana into the proper configuration to achieve the desired effect. Loki finished donning her harness first and bounced over to comment. Like programming, right? The Green Mare had oftentimes spoken to the members of the herd about hacking and computer-related information that mostly flew so far over everyone else's head that it might as well have been a passing satellite. Yet a few things stuck out to Alexia, as her work with diagrams and their relation to spell weaving created various parallels. Right, not only does the pattern have to be correct, but the medium itself has to work as well. That's why I always try to use white chalk, because it provides a neutral platform for most arrays, sort of like silicon for electronics. Pack Rat hummed at the different point of view. So I was right, the pattern itself is like the software, while the medium is the hardware. Toon tilted her head in a half shrug, half nod. Roughly, I suppose. The pink earth pony handed the goggles over to the azure-haired mare. It was a little heavier than Conrad's own pair. The standard unicorn harness also has a sort of radar, if you will, that pulses small amounts of mana out away from you. The purpose is to detect any anti-magic wards that may be nearby. This headgear will give you a visual warning when one is detected. That way you're not caught off guard by the presence of one being in the area. Alexia hummed at the idea. The alicorn was still keeping the existence of a counterspell for the anti-magic ward a secret. As much as I trust Thompson, I also trust him to tell his superiors about my counterspell. I think plausible deniability is his best defense if and when I reveal it. For the mission though, I think I'll keep it active so the anti-magic zones don't affect me from here on out. She decided to focus more on the customized gift. Well, there's nothing quite as exciting as being on the bleeding edge of technology. Let me put it on and give it a go. Toon's harness took a little doing, but she managed to put it on and activate the integrated electronics by the time everyone else was ready to go. Pack-Rat took 2 stylus pens out of Alexia's left hind leg pocket that looked as if they had been taken from a touchpad. These will take the place of your chalk. As you draw through the air, the onboard computer will map out the positions and will automatically tell the crystals where to project the lines. The center of the array will be your carbuncle, as I predict that might create even more effective results. But I have only a hunch to base that off of. The pink mare carefully twisted the top of each pen in her hoof. It was not exactly easy when it was meant for nimble human fingers or a unicorn's kinesis. Nevertheless, spending 2 years with nothing but hooves have given Pack-Rat, along with almost every other non-unicorn pony, enough practice to make it look as if it was no real difficulty. You click the pen to make it stop and stop drawing like you would a real ink pen. And my personal touch on this is that if you twist this piece here to the left, that will increase the thickness of the line, and turn right to thin it out. Clever, the silver alicorn commented with genuine enthusiasm. Her biggest concern up to that point was going to be that very issue, but Pack-Rat had learned enough about diagrams over the past year to know line thickness played an important role in both conjuration and abjuration arrays, but less so in other disciplines. Even if this only ends up as a partial success, this is still most impressive. Even though the alicorn's magic had no effect on the cutie mark-bearing earth mare, Pack-Rat still felt exuberant at her princess's praise. Glad to be of service, ma'am. Oh, one last thing before I forget, if the pen breaks for any reason, you can simulate the pen with that unicorn illumination spell where the mode of light moves on its own. Brighter for thicker lines, and dimmer for thinner. I managed to link that up to the computer straight through the crystals instead of from the computer to the crystals. Don't ask me on the ratios on that one, because I'm still working out the bugs. I just know it works, sort of. Plus it's a little difficult to do when I don't have a horn and all. The pink mare was caught between excitement at revealing her custom-built creation all just for her princess, and chilling terror because her invention was not out of the prototype phase yet. It was not called the bleeding edge for nothing. Alexia couldn't help but to fall into her role as princess for a few moments as she looked between invention and inventor with what Pack-Rat perceived as a regal smile. I think this is a marvelous creation. It really epitomizes what we Terrans hope to strive for, does it not? Even if I cannot officially recognize your work, seeing as you are using the agency's tech, I must express my profound gratitude. Thank you for this marvelous gift. Pack-Rat was grinning ear to ear at the praise and had difficulty speaking. Well, I mean. It was, her face flushed red at that embarrassment, so she bowed low to Toon. Thank you, princess. Thank you so much. Words failed her beyond that single phrase, so she tried switching topics. Actually, since you're back on the in the know list and I made this thing entirely off the books, you can keep it if you like. Truly. I should be glad she was doing this for me instead of black market profiteering. I would be honored to have it. I won't mind being your guinea pig for some field tests, she added with a wiry grin. The joke made the pink pony stutter again after raising her head back up. If I had known you were returning to field duty sooner, I would have had it ready by now, but with so much to do. Alexia raised a polite restraining hoof. I tease. Why don't you help me put it on? The quartermaster blinked 2 times before realizing the joke and her good humor returned. I'd be honored. Asterisk. End of part 1.